Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C. That knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. Last year, I reached over 100 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you all for getting me this far on YouTube. I never would have continued making these and other videos without your guys' support. So as a thank you to all of you wonderful people subscribing and watching my content, I'm going to be making a big countdown. A huge countdown. A countdown to end all countdowns! Throughout this year, I will be counting down my top 100 favorite movies from the 1980s. I mentioned before with the few reviews I've done that I love the 80s for being the decade of movies I was exposed the most to as a child and has been the one decade that I discover more and more classic and favorite movies from. And these are the movies that I would consider my favorite from each year throughout the decade. So, for the first part of this list, I will be starting with a countdown of my favorite movies from 1989, which, while not the best year for the movies of the decade, does still offer a good number of classics that I love. So, without further ado, here is my first part of my top 100 favorite movies of the 1980s. Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time? Number 100. Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Kicking off our list is what many people consider to be the worst of the Paramount Friday movies, and was sadly the last one made before they sold the franchise to New Line. However, I do find that most of the kills, the setting, and the music are some of the better aspects of the movie. The 8th entry focuses on Jason being woken up from the previous movie's events, leading to him joining on a boat ride headed for New York City, as he chases down several students that were taking the boat ride for a graduation trip. I will admit that the movie isn't the best of the franchise, but I do like watching it from time to time as, like any other slasher film, because of the kills in the movie. Despite that some of them were censored, they are still fun and unique, ranging from Jason killing an 80s hair metal girl with her guitar to punching a guy's head off. Plus, I do like the small funny moments sprinkled throughout the movie, like Jason randomly teleporting around a dance hall to him chasing after the main characters, which leads to him having a funny interaction with some punk rockers. I do wish that the film was able to create the scenes in the original script, having read the original plans for the movie, but I do understand that because it was still a B-movie series, it was impossible to get what they wanted with such a small budget. But the last third of the movie will give you what you want. You just have to sit through a very slow burn of Jason killing kids on a boat. Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time? Number 99. Glory. I'm not sure how surprised people will be with this choice, but I do think this is one of the great Civil War movies that has a really top-notch cast. The movie focuses on the story of the 54th Regiment, one of the earliest all-African-American units that fought in the American Civil War, and all the hardships that they faced, including its commander, who fought hard to get their soldiers their respect and rights during their time in the war. I will admit that this is another sappy, over-the-top war film that follows the action film style similar to those of Hacksaw Ridge and Platoon. But I think what makes this movie stand out for me is the cast. I love Cary Elwes, Morgan Freeman, and Denzel Washington as some of the soldiers, and to a lesser extent Matthew Broderick as the commander of this ragtag group, as he is the only thing about this movie that I find is incredibly weak. His monotone acting doesn't fit that well as a commander in most of the movie, especially the scenes where he has to be angry or commanding, and instead he looks and sounds like a squirmy little mouse. But the rest of the movie does make up for it with the other characters, the action, and the writing is pretty good for a movie like this. I do see why there are plenty of people who don't like these types of movies with how repetitive and predictable they can be, but I wouldn't say that they're all bad, and this is one that I enjoy and highly recommend. Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time? Number 98. The Wizard. Yes, the movie that was a giant Nintendo commercial is on my list because I actually think that it's a good movie. The movie follows two brothers, one of which has PTSD after seeing his sister die, and the older one takes him away after he hears that he's being committed to an insane asylum, which leads to them going on a road trip, meeting several characters along the way, and end up entering a video game contest so that the brothers can get to California. First of all, I will acknowledge that yes, this movie has a crap ton of product placement for Nintendo, especially considering that Nintendo had planned this movie to be the one that revealed Super Mario Bros. 3 to the fans and general audiences. But I do think if you take the product placement out of the equation, the movie is a nice, if cheesy, kids' adventure road trip about a broken family coming together to find their kids and coming to grips with the loss of a loved one, especially one that was so young. I do like the more quieter moments of the movie, and the cast does a really good job at capturing just simple moments that I feel like everyone can relate to. I personally do like the scenes where the father and other son are just playing Nintendo when trying to help each other beat the game they're playing. Are there goofy moments in the movie? Absolutely. Do I think these moments ruin the movie? No. I do feel like people focus way too much on the product placement and ignore a lot of the great character writing that is in the movie.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 97. Uncle Buck. Not my favorite John Hughes movie, but this is one of his better ones. The movie is about a guy who is asked to watch over his brother's kids after his sister-in-law's father has a heart attack, and it leads to wacky shenanigans. Again, out of all of the John Hughes and John Candy movies that I've seen, this one is good, but not as great as the other movies that John Hughes has made, as I think they do the similar type of comedy better. I love John as Uncle Buck, as he is a lazy sleazeball, but he does care about his family to the point of helping them out in different ways, like kicking out a drunk clown that was hired for his nephew's birthday, defending his youngest niece from a very bitchy principal, and protecting his older niece from an asshole who just wants to use her. Leading to some of my favorite moments of him tormenting this asshole with some very funny dark humor. If you've never seen any of John Hughes' movies or are just starting out watching John Candy's filmography, this is a high recommendation from me, but I would say that you should watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles or The Great Outdoors first.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 96. Dead Poet Society. Speaking of amazing comedians and great roles, Dead Poet Society is one of Robin Williams' best serious roles that I feel doesn't get talked about as much as Good Will Hunting or Good Morning Vietnam. Robin Williams plays a teacher working at this rich private school where he teaches his students to take a more free-thinking look at poetry, which does lead to the students reviving an old secret club called the Dead Poet Society, and how that free thinking affects their lives. I am aware that throughout the years there were a ton of movies that copied this same premise. Scent of a Woman and School Tides are two that I can think off the top of my head. But this is the first and only movie like that I saw when I was in high school, and it really resonated with me. I like that Robin's character is serious about teaching but has a laid-back attitude, wanting his students to be free thinkers and not be bogged down by the way the other upper-class teachers and parents have been treating these kids. The kids themselves are also fun and interesting to watch as they start out just reading poetry, which leads to them broadening their interests more into one of them wanting to try acting. I do feel like the ending is a bit sappy and predictable if you've seen similar movies like this, but as someone who loves Robin Williams and coming-of-age stories, this one just fits that bill for me, and I love rewatching this movie anytime I can.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 95. Pet Sematary. One of the many Stephen King movie adaptations that I can say is still one of my favorites, despite personally preferring the book. Though I mostly prefer the book, as this movie has a little too much unnecessary violence in it when compared to the book. The movie follows a doctor who moves to a small town with his family, leading to a series of events where his neighbor shows him an ancient Native American burial ground that can raise the dead. As a comparison of the book, they both take the themes of being careful what you wish for and make it very disturbing, especially when it is a discussion on death. However, I do think that the one downside of the movie is having much more gruesome deaths in it, as it takes away the more natural progression of death and makes it more Hollywood-esque. But that doesn't change the fact that the movie still has great themes of the tragic death of a loved one, especially with the death of a 3-year-old, as well as having a great cast that brings this movie to life, so to speak. And if anyone is curious, no, I did not like the remake, as that movie changed way too much of the original story to appeal to a more general audience, and it lost a lot of what made the book so scary and interesting.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 94. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. When it comes to time travel stories, I find a lot of them aren't very well done and end up being repetitive in terms of the writing. Thankfully, we have this movie and its sequels to bring a bit of charm and fresh air to a very stagnant genre. The movie follows a pair of high school flunkies that end up using a time machine to pass their history class thanks to a man from the future in order to save his current timeline. Mostly, I love the movie for the wacky shenanigans these two get into with them picking up the different iconic figures throughout time, and then when they bring them to the modern age. leading them having to find and round them up after leaving them at a mall and ending with a very fun final presentation. An excellent adventure that will charm any party dude into a good time.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 93. Batman. While I know many people find this movie to be quite dated when compared to the Dark Knight trilogy, I do still appreciate this movie for making the Dark Knight much closer to the Golden and Bronze Age version after the end of the 60s Adam West series. I do think what has held this movie up for me is the cast. While I will admit that there have been better versions of these characters in both live action and animation, the writing in this movie makes the characters very close to their Golden and Bronze Age comic book counterparts. Plus, I love the more dark and serious moments in the movie, as this was one of the first dark comic book movies I saw as a kid. Though I will admit that Jack Nicholson as the Joker is a performance I don't think is held up as well as other Joker performances, and has been improved by actors like Heath Ledger and Mark Hamill. Get back in the corner, you!
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 92. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The last of the original Indiana Jones movies, this classic movie was the first real adventure movie I saw as a kid, with this movie following Indy on his quest to find the Holy Grail before the Nazis find it. I'd say what makes this a favorite of mine is the many comedic moments in it, like having Indy and his dad trying to get out of a burning building and they end up doing an Abbott and Costello routine, or when some of the other characters think Indy is dead and see the destroyed remains of a tank he was stuck on, but he survives and just walks up to them confused and looks over to see what they're looking at. I love the mix of great action, comedy, and the heartfelt ending with Indy having to give up something that could save the world.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Number 91. Kiki's Delivery Service. Probably one of the most heartwarming Ghibli films ever made, and is one that puts a smile on my face every time I watch it. The story of a young witch who goes out into the world to discover herself is so simple, yet is handled extremely well with how well they wrote the main character, Kiki. Being optimistic, but having moments of concern and frustration like anyone her age, is what makes her one of my favorite Ghibli characters. On top of that, the music and especially the background designs in the movie are just gorgeous to view that it drives me up a wall that more people haven't treated these amazing movies with the same respect as live action films because animated movies are just for kids, which is a complete and utter bullshit statement. As movies like this and many of the other Ghibli movies show, the amazing beauty that comes from the animation and in many ways surpasses live action by showing off the amazing world, creating lovable characters, and having amazing writing that's timeless. As a wise man once said,
Animation is cinema. Animation is not a genre.
damn straight, my good sir. Well, there's part 1 of my top 180s movies. Check in for part 2 very soon, and as always, thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover, cause you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
You got the touch.